جيبيني.
You're listening to Unbound, the arts and culture of Palestine on WUSB Stony Brook 90.1 FM on the dial with Sam
and Amal.
شدوا بعضكم يا أهل فلسطين، شدوا بعضكم، ما ودعتكم رحلة فلسطين، ما ودعتكم.
ما بنسى أرضي في قلبي، والله ما بنسى أرضي.
عوارك صيني لشت بالحبر، عوارك صيني.
And anyway, the activism is working. Look at Starbucks, look at McDonald's, they're posting record losses. Look at the politicians. Look at the way they're pivoting. The Labour Party in Britain is a great example.
Wake up, it's a long night, darling. Wake up, it's the brightest sky. No love, it's a dark night, darling. Hold on to me for dear life. Wake up, where do we go to? Wake up by a fire in your can save you. It's all just a matter of time. Wake up, won't you listen to the people? Wake up from the mountain of the light. No love you've been upon through every sequel. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Call your brother, call your mother. Wake up under rain from the sky. Oh love, we're digging deeper in the rubble. Hold on to my voice outside.
If we can make that much of a difference with, say, 750,000 people on the streets of London, how do we get double? How do we get triple? I'm interested in the people who've been on the fence. Not Zionists. I'm not interested in an ideology that supports the mass murder of children. I'll never get my head around that. I'm not qualified to understand that degree of psychosis. I'm interested in people in the middle. How do we get them on the streets? There are people in the middle, I would imagine, who have been fed the propaganda from the Zionist side. You know, to those people I'd say, turn off your local news, turn off CNN, turn off BBC just for an hour, just for a few minutes, and turn on Al Jazeera. Ask yourself, when you look at the other side, have you been lied to? Is there more to it?
Forever. I think I'm running out of time, I think I'm running out of patience, and I think I'm losing count. How many lives have they taken? And I'm fighting for my people and their lives in liberation. If y'all think y'all gon' win, y'all got the wrong generation.
Satanic intensity. How much pain can we carry? How much more pain can our hearts handle? How much more pain can we bear? How much more? This Zionist government has exceeded the devil himself. This barbaric, illegal government has not left a tactic in which it has used against the people of Gaza.
Mahmoud Khalil was born a refugee. Last December he got a master's degree. He was a student at Columbia. When the war began, to be expelled and deported had not been the plan. But sometimes you have to step up, and that's what he did. His training started early as a little kid. Growing up in Syria, in a slice of Palestine, exiled by 1949. Mahmoud Khalil spoke oftentimes before the press who came to cover this protest against the war. The tents which got exactly the attention that they sought, to speak out against the destruction our country's policies have wrought. As the bombs kept falling on the children down below, some people had to do something, and the place where they could go was the protest camp. Where people went, and that's where you could find him with the backdrop of tents. Mahmoud Khalil was at home with his pregnant wife when one day came the visit that would change his life. Trump said he'd deport them, and now he's following through. ICE agents came and got him, as they were sent to do, with no uniforms or warrants, just an order for a raid. A week into Israel's complete blockade, they say he supports the resistance, though nothing can be found aside from horror at the buildings in Gaza collapsing to the ground. Mahmoud Khalil in detention, they're not saying where. For evidence against him, they've not a tweet to share. ICE agents on the campus, what's next nobody knows, with an administration happy whichever way it goes. And silence from the Congress, except for one or two. The leadership apparently thinks it's a fine thing to do, to suspend the rule of law in defense of genocide. The future possibilities are open wide. Mahmoud Khalil.
We're sat down in baking sun, cable ties behind our back. If you lift your head to offer any solidarity to the comrade ahead who's getting physically and mentally abused, your head is slapped back down on the ground. And I'm just sitting there going, I've tried to bring baby formula to Gaza. How could you be treating an Irish citizen like this? Like, we end up a couple of days later in a prison cell with one of our delegates. He's a 75-year-old man, the most gentle man you'd ever meet in your life, Paddy Kelly, just simply asking for his insulin. They won't give him his insulin. We're concerned that he's going to die. And so there's a borderline riot in our wing of the prison. Eventually, instead of a doctor coming along, they just bring in a SWAT team to try and restrain the protests. And I quote, the guard said, "We don't have any doctors for animals." So that's how they view us. Like, they view us as animals. That was a comment. They call us terrorist animals. They spat in Diago. He's one of the leaders of the movement. They spat in his face. And like, I just kept thinking to myself, well, two things. One, if they're doing this to people like me with the passport I have, imagine what they're doing to Palestinians when there's no repercussions for it at all and there's no diplomatic pressure on them to stop doing it at all. And secondly, how on earth does the world, again, allow this country to operate like this? Like, imagine if the Iranian regime or the Russian regime treated a 75-year-old Irish man like that. There would be widespread outrage, and rightly so. But somehow this Israeli exceptionalism, even 2 years into a genocide, still persists.
Hummus is Middle Eastern. Israeli food doesn't exist. Don't let them claim our falafel or our kunafa. It's awful to steal a culture and also to claim a homeland as your own.
Hi everybody, you're listening to Unbound, the Arts and Culture with Sam and Amal. Thank you for being with us this evening. Hi Sam.
Hello. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you for being here this evening, Amal.
Thank you. And you just heard the voice of, interspersed with the other voices. The first was the Irish comedian and Palestinian solidarity activist Tadek Hickey. Weeks ago, not many weeks ago, he sailed for Gaza. He was on the Handala before their boat carrying, as you heard him say, baby formula, was illegally boarded in international waters while bound for Gaza, Palestine. Then you heard the music of Desi. She's a singer solidarity activist, followed by the emphatic, heartbroken voice of an Australian activist whose words were posted by the beloved singer-journalist Saleh Al-Jarawi, martyred by Israel on Sunday, yesterday, just days after this supposed ceasefire, moments after he finally rejoiced, surviving a genocide, and then shortly after they killed him, they released his brother, who had been abducted in Gaza. You also heard the voice, a piece called Mahmoud Khalil, by tonight's clear and resolute social justice solidarity singer-songwriter guest, David Rovics. And the last voice was that of Leila Hagazi. She's a New York musician, solidarity activist from Staten Island, who also sailed on the Freedom Flotilla and was also abducted and imprisoned by Israel, kept in a women's prison where the Palestinian women are being held hostage while being tortured, raped, starved, and denied every single basic human right. Leila's from Staten Island. None of our Congress people spoke up for her. Our State Department did nothing for the Americans who were abducted by Israel.
Nothing.
As you heard Tadek say, what is it with this Israeli exceptionalism? If this were to happen anywhere else in the world, something would be done about it immediately. But Leila was not the only one from New York. There was Eric Line from Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
Is he not from Nassau County? Again,
Yes.
Where's the State Department? Where are our Congress people? Where's the governor? Where was anybody?
They're all paid off.
We have a lot of announcements to read tonight. Friday, October 17th at 6:30 p.m. is Right of Return. That's WRITE, Right of Return. All proceeds go to Heal Palestine and the Go Project Hope. It's a showcase of 5 diaspora Palestinian women, their stories in their chosen expression of words. emceed by the amazing Fouad of Nazareth at the People's Forum, 320 West, 37th Street, New York. And this from Vigil of Gaza, Wednesday, October 15th at 9:30 a.m. If anybody can get to the public sessions, these are the Suffolk County Legislature public sessions, and they alternate between Riverhead and Hauppauge. This time it'll be in Riverhead, Wednesday the 15th. And it's she's going to talk about the topic of the Freedom Flotillas and issues about Gaza. They will be addressed by members of the Vigil for Gaza. You can show up in solidarity or speak up because Suffolk County fuels the genocide and is 100% complicit. At about the same time, the LIIJA Faith Committee presents its interfaith statement. Please show your support and add your own testimony. Call on your legislatures to take action and oppose ICE kidnappings, to support our immigrant community members who have been detained and their struggling families who have been left behind. And that will be, again, in Riverhead at the Evans Griffin Building, 605 Old Country Road. Again, we have 18 Suffolk County legislatures, and in all this time, not one of them has spoken against the genocide. We handed it to them on a platter. They did nothing. My recommendation to us, to everyone out there, find 18 decent human beings adept at being human. Replace all 18 of them. Saturday, October 18th at 11 a.m. in Port Jeff Station at the corner of 112 and 347, which is now called, or has been called, Resistance Corner at the Train Car Park, is No Kings Rally. You can bring signs with messages for Gaza against the genocide, the occupation, and the apartheid. Activist and radio presenter Bill McNulty from here, WUSB, will be doing interviews from noon until 2 p.m. Wednesday, October 22nd, if you're in Brooklyn, at 7 p.m., there's a weekly run, and this is every Wednesday at 7 p.m., a weekly run, Runners for Justice in Palestine, Prospect Park at the Grecian Shelter, Parkside Avenue, and Parade Palace. I think yesterday, the day before, they just had a 5K for Gaza,
yes.
So there's a lot happening.
Yesterday.
There is a lot happening in Brooklyn. Sunday, October 26th, 6 p.m., in Selden at Shai and Kahwe. Tonight's guest, David Rovics, will be performing for a Gaza fundraiser for the Artists of Gaza, for the Middle East Children's Alliance, and for the Gaza Sunbirds, the Paralympics team, who are doing brilliantly. The tickets can be found, it's $20 is a donation suggestion, and it's listenupgaza.betterworld.org. I know that it's Listen Up for Gaza, but they shortened it to listenupgaza.betterworld.org. Or contact me or Sam if you need more info. Wednesday, October 29th at 6:30 p.m., Unerasable Narratives, Research and Design During Genocide, again at the People's Forum in the city. Friday, October 31st, 5 p.m., Palestinian Knowledge Practices, where speakers will discuss their work of collecting scattered archives and restoring displaced or stolen documents. Rooted in refusal and samud, steadfastness, these are practices that aim to connect the destroyed past with the present and foster knowledge, sovereignty for a liberated Palestinian future. The event is free, and the website the website info is on Columbia University Center for Palestine Studies. That's Columbia University Center for Palestine Studies at the performance space in the city. Then already into November 8th on a Saturday, 2 to 6 p.m., Palestine 101. It's a public screening where you can learn more about the history, the culture, and the people of Palestine. Again, at the People's Forum. There are vigils that happen weekly out here on the island. Sundays from 1 to 2:30, Vigil for Gaza, Port Jeff Village, and that's always at the corner of 25A and 112. There are placards and signs, and everything's available for you. You can just show up. New banners have been printed for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and these display a near satanic image of Israeli Air Force jet fighters, marking Breast Cancer Awareness Month by painting U.S. jet fighters neon pink. I have a shortened quote by Christina Caltarucci from Slate in 2016. Imagine all the awareness that will rise in the contrails of these pink jet fighters. Brought to you in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month by the U.S. Navy and the Israeli Air Force. Like breast cancer, fighter jets kill women, making these instruments of war perfect on-message vehicles for the deadly weapons of awareness. They will fly through the skies, blasting tumors and lack of awareness with their missiles, bringing pink death and pink destruction and pink civilian casualties and pink refugee crisis and pink destruction of cultural heritage wherever their cancer-aware pilots lead. Again, archived episodes, many of them, but not all of them, but many of them are on the radio tab at amalillustration.com, A-M-A-L, illustration.com. And again, you're listening to Unbound, the arts and culture of Palestine.
Yes.
With Sam and Amal.
Sam and Amal.
On WUSB.
WUSB, Stony Brook, 90.1 FM, on this Indigenous Peoples Day.
It is Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yes. Here on Turtle Island, in, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is Matinecock land.
Stony Brook?
I'm not sure if Stony Brook... Well, I'm from Matinecock land. Stony Brook... Setauket? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so we must keep the first peoples of this land in mind. The horrors they have suffered through now several centuries of occupation, and the genocide they have faced at the hands of the colonial powers, and this colonial power that continues to deprive Indigenous peoples here of their rights and of their land and of their resources and of their health.
I would encourage people to get involved with, there are Indigenous communities out here, and I know that they have festivals and celebrations once or twice a year, but that I would go far beyond that, because they really could use a hand. They really, really could, and they often speak out for Palestine, and we need to be there for them too, because this is an Indigenous movement, and it's people around the world. Out on the West Coast, on Alcatraz, there is an annual festival with Palestinians and the Indigenous Native Americans, and it's a beautiful, week-long festival that occurs during the solstice. I have a book to recommend. It's called The North Gaza Massacres, and by Gazan journalist, and he's a son of Jabalia refugee camp, Hamzeh Khalil Abu Al-Tarabish. And it tells the stories of everyday heroes of Jabalia refugee camp. That's one of the first camps that was struck during the genocide. Although the book is primarily human in tone, one of the core reasons, this is from the author, one of the core reasons I adopted this project is my engagement in a real struggle against Israel within the broader battle over narrative that began the moment Israel began to colonize Palestinian land. The battle over the narrative is one of the arms of this colonization. I see it not merely as a military occupation, but above all as an intellectual colonization seeking to alter facts and reshape Palestinian and global consciousness by sharing the narrative that serves Israel and misleading the global community from knowing the truth. That's why, since its founding, Israel's pursued hundreds of Palestinian intellectuals and writers by killing or imprisoning them. The most prominent examples include the writer and poet Ghassan Khanafani, assassinated in Beirut in the early 1970s, the detention of the revolutionary poet the illustrations for Handala Naji Alali. Perhaps the saying sometimes voiced among Israeli leaders, "The good Palestinian is a dead Palestinian," about how to deal with Palestinians, sums up what they intend to convey. And that goes on until today, until this very minute. The same strategy continues. Nearly 300 journalists have been killed in Gaza in the last 2 years, an average of one every 2 days. If Israel can't kill the journalist, it targets the family or destroys the home, or all of the above. The goal is always the same, to block the truth, to control the narrative, and to replace our lived reality with Israel's version of history. North Gaza massacres by Gazan journalist and son of Jabalia refugee camp, Hamza Khalil Abu al-Tarabash, published in 2024. And
where can this book be purchased?
Better World Books and I think Interlink. Yes, and there's a review on Goodreads, but my recommendation is always, if you could look for the Palestinian publishers, that would be great. Interlink, by the way, is the only Palestinian publisher we've got here on the East Coast, sort of in the U.S., but there are, we've got scores of publishers who are there for social justice issues. Worth mentioning is that the Frankfurt Book Fair, the world's largest trade fair in Germany, is happening October 17th through the 19th, and it is to be boycotted. It refuses to assert and uphold the rights of the Palestinian people under international law. It's neither condemned nor severed economic and cultural ties with Israeli apartheid. It's done just the opposite. In 2023, it cancelled the prize ceremony for Palestinian author Adania Shibli, which led to calls for boycotts and withdrawals from the event, and it handed the prize instead to an American Zionist who celebrates the decimation of Palestine and its media outlets. Publishers for Palestine, a global coalition of more than 600 publishers based in 50 countries worldwide, has called for the boycott of the fair for its complicity and refusal to acknowledge the genocide. This from Gantala Press, a Filipino feminist publishing group quoted in Rolling Stone. "We cannot, in good faith, continue to profess producing great books for the world, knowing that the institution where we are sharing these books is also deeply involved in the erasure of other people. With its complicity, the Frankfurt Book Fair normalizes the destruction of Palestinian culture, books, and the absence of Palestinian knowledge." From the novelist Glenn Diaz, "For me it's simple. You have people being dehumanized, silenced, and rendered completely slaughtered. Therefore, we boycott." Like the Palestine Museum exhibiting across from the Venice Biennale, the Palestinian Liberatory Book Fair, Liberatory Book Fair, will be set up right opposite the Frankfurt Book Fair. So if anybody intends to go to the Frankfurt Book Fair, please boycott it and just turn around, and right behind you will be something amazing, because collective memory and what's happened to the Palestinian people needs to be preserved, not erased. Tonight, he'll come on around 7 p.m. We have our folk and solidarity singer-songwriter David Rovics. He, in the early 90s, was a full-time busker in the Boston subways, and by the mid-90s, he was traveling the world as a professional. And he has taken up the mantle for Palestinian solidarity. He'll be with us tonight. He flew from Portland, and he is touring the East Coast right now. The New York area, Connecticut, and I think Massachusetts as well.
Well, it will be an honor to have him on here to speak with us. And I have some messages from Gaza. This is from Mahmoud Al-Baya, who is currently in Gaza City. He and his family, his brother Ihab, his elder brother Muhammad, with his young son Yazan and his wife. Then their parents were all trapped in Gaza City, along with many others who could not secure transportation before the Israelis closed the corridor to get south, and so suffered through fire and brimstone, non-stop bombing, non-stop gunfire, hell on earth in these past weeks. As this deal approached, the gunfire and the bombing became frantic almost, because they were trying to do as much damage and kill as many people as possible before the ceasefire, if we can call it that, came into effect.
No, we can't call it that.
We cannot call it that. And
is there anything left of the neighborhood?
There are parts of it left, yes. I believe their house was partially destroyed, but not fully. And they were with their neighbors cleaning up the rubble and retrieving the martyrs when the gunfire and the bombing ceased. But it hasn't truly stopped. There's still sporadic gunfire from the occupation army. He said it seems they're not yet done with their revenge for us. And yesterday we lost a very prominent journalist to one of the forces of the clans that the Israelis armed and who are collaborating with the occupation, unfortunately killed Saleh al-Jafari, and
again, that was after the ceasefire, where they shouldn't have touched anyone.
And people, right now, there's this overhanging threat of violence in these negotiations. So it's under the gun, under the bomb, and an extreme amount of pressure on negotiators on the Hamas's negotiators to accept this deal, and they were willing to, with modifications that ensured that the Palestinian people's rights would be protected, and that the path to statehood would be realized. But we know from experience that these agreements never really come to fruition with the Israelis.
No, I mean, as they said it, they were breaking it. But I do find it disgusting that Palestinians are forced to negotiate conditions to end their own genocide. What is this 20-point plan? Why 1 point? Why anything? End it unconditionally. Just end it.
Unconditionally.
Just end it. And now they have to negotiate, because every gram of food is still controlled by Israel. What comes in, they are still starving to death. So this is not over. But the big hope is not coming. If you were listening to Amy Goodman to Democracy Now, the man from Gaza whose son was killed by Israel, the hope is not coming from this ridiculous summit in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where they just want to make themselves look good, but everyone who will be there is guilty of genocide.
And they seem to be killing everyone who's not going along with it, like the three Qatari officials who were killed supposedly in a car crash. It's like anyone who dissents, they're either cutting out of the agreement or killing.
But the big hope is us. The big hope is that the protests this weekend, no one trusts Israel anymore, and that's absolutely clear. And so the big hope is with us and the world and just the people and its people power. And the protests are getting larger. Every time there's one, it's larger than the previous one. We're exceeding numbers. So keep joining. Again, you will meet the most beautiful people at these rallies and vigils and protests, and we support each other. And be loud and be absolutely clear that it is intolerable that anyone in the world should have to live without their human rights. And that no one has the right to just strip you of them, which is happening in so many places.
So, I have this writing from Mahmoud Abaya. He sent me this yesterday to read to you. It's his testimony to some of what happened in the war. Just after he sent it to me, he was talking about some artillery strikes that were happening at the moment. It ended, and a new beginning before the 7th of October. I was an ordinary person, a university student who loved his studies and his beautiful city, Gaza, the mother of beginnings and the mother of endings. I was hoping to achieve all my dreams, to get a job after my graduation, to build a private home, and to marry the girl I love. These are just dreams for any human being, but at that time, in the eyes of the world, we were not human. Every day before the 7th of October, we were killed in front of the cameras, and Gaza was the most dangerous place on the planet. We did not practice violence and the peaceful return marches, but thousands were killed and injured. The West Bank was coveted by these settlers, so they were stealing Palestinian lands every day before your eyes. As for Jerusalem, they were attacking Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Muslims weren't doing a thing. All of this until I woke up, and everyone woke up to the explosions of October 7th. I woke up that day, and I had the phone next to me, so I turned on the news and turned on the television. I found everything that had happened. All of this could have been avoided if the world had given the Palestinians their rights and had not been silent in the face of their daily killing and displacement. The next day, Israel opened the gates of hell on Gaza, with no food, no water, no electricity. The insane bombing began. In 20 seconds, my ears had heard 60 explosions with violent belts of fire from the intensity of the bombing. We were displaced to the shelters of Khan Yunis in the south. They told us it was humanitarian, so they could laugh at us and the world. It was an open prison for 2 million people. Food was scarce, and water was so scarce that we showered every 2 weeks. They opened the crossing twice a week, at a rate of 50 trucks a day, which means 100 trucks a week. 100 trucks for 2 million people a week. For your information, we needed 6,000 trucks a week. They were photographing the entry of the trucks and exporting them to the blind channels and paid media, and the world was accepting their propaganda wholeheartedly. We were being bombed while we were in the tents. There's an entire camp that became underground at a depth of 9 meters. There are at least 100 tents in it. We saw hunger and deprivation of food in their so-called humanitarian areas that they bombed, and they also bombed the water wells there. They destroyed all of the hospitals, Al-Shifa, the Nasser complex, the Indonesian hospital, Al-Najjar, and the Jordanian hospital. They all destroyed them. They destroyed all of Gaza's schools, universities, mosques, and churches. Israel had gangs like Yasser Abu, Youth were stealing hundreds of aid trucks, causing artificial famine for the displaced. They were kidnapping people like a doctor and his daughter in front of the British hospital in Al-Mawasi, Khan Yunis. All of this hell continued during the Biden era until Trump came and established the first truce, and I had a feeling that it would fail because he did not give the agreement guarantees. In January, we returned to Gaza, and our souls that were taken from the pain of displacement from Gaza returned to us. His brother, Ihab, had remained in the north all of this time. She turned from a beautiful girl into a girl with a burnt face and body, but we loved her anyway. We went back and spread out the streets with tents and tried to create a life of markets and open streets, but they quickly broke that agreement at night and returned to bombing and closing the crossings. They made the markets thirsty for products, and famine began. They redeployed their gangs that steal aid, and even created more of them, and began a new ground campaign in which they destroyed what was left of the city. Israel was creative in killing and starving people in Zakim, Nablus, Maraj, and the American government established points and death traps, the laughing stock of the world's relief aid. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Do you know what is the protocol followed by the opening of the Zakim crossing and others, and the American points, which is for a tank or a sniper to advance and start shooting at where people are located? Whoever was destined to live would reach the place of aid with a high probability that it would not happen. Because the aid is limited and the numbers were huge. Many people were killed in front of me by snipers with that aid, and people in front of me were killed by being run over by the trucks because they were being given instructions to the driver that they would snipe him from behind if he stopped. Our bodies had dried up because of the famine that Israel had created and published false justifications that it was feeding us. Even the videos that they were publishing on their private pages that there were goods in Gaza were untrue. The prices are very high, and no one buys them because they are rare. For example, a Coca-Cola was $25, a Snickers bar was $20. Is it possible for a displaced Gazan to buy it at these prices? Israel has made legends of us that we endure hunger, thirst, loss, pain, bombing, and destruction, and it believes that we are being tortured, until we reached before the end of the war, when Israel forced people to move south for the second time, and the war ended, and here they are stuck there with no money. The costs of return, even if they did return, their homes were destroyed, and now the war is ending, and Gaza is still writing its name in history. They left, and Gaza remained. Its people will remain here. In the war I lost my dearest friends, my family, and the places I was accustomed to, but despite all this Holocaust, I am a survivor of hell. We will make life out of death and hope despite the betrayal we have been subjected to. We will remain on this earth as long as we are alive, and we will be buried in it. I would love to renew my thanks to my brother Sam. This person was the best thing I got from the war. My dear brother, you are a reason for hope here. You were trying to provide food for me and 2 families in famine and trying to get us out of places of danger. Your pure heart was always there with us. Even in my university and educational career, he was the one who supported me without hesitation, and he still is. Even when I needed clothes or to buy some food items when they were available, he did not fail me in anything. Our friendship in that war is the most beautiful thing that happened to me, and as you said, our friendship will last forever. Thank you, my dear friend, your loyal friend, and your love, Mahmoud from Gaza, a symbol of hope and steadfastness which will return more beautiful than it was. Thank you. And he's writing a novel about the war, so this is part of it. That he's
one thing that really comes through is the fact that they're also watching the news. While they are the news, they are watching the news. They're listening to the lies about themselves. So the more people speak out the truth about what's happening, by now, I can't say don't worry about the repercussions, but it has to end, and everyone has to continue speaking, because the more we do, the more courage you give to the person next to you, and the more courage that person has, it just there's a positive trickle effect as opposed to a negative one that we usually get. Things have changed radically. Nobody wants to go back to the way things were, but Gaza is still being dismantled. This really isn't a ceasefire. It's in name, but not in deed. Thank you so much, Sam. Sam has this amazing relationship with his friend, and it's an honor when we meet more and more people in Gaza. It's such a blessing.
It is a blessing.
But now we're looking at video. I mean, we haven't even had time. I don't know about you, Sam. I haven't had time to go back and look. But, I have this big question. Where are they? Where are all the people that we saw running from the north on day 1 of the genocide and day 2? And, where's the doctor who fell in love with his patient? And I think they got married. Where are they? Where is the doctor who they had no electricity and he was in the hall? He was like, he fell in love with, this was a second doctor, with another patient, ready to ask her father for her hand in marriage. She had already agreed, and he's like, can you imagine, that they're trying to kill me, but I've simultaneously fallen in love. Where are they? Where are the people who married during this? Because they seem to have disappeared. We can't find them. And because of time, to be honest, we haven't been able to go back and look. We will, but it's tricky. Where are all the children who were forced up against the Philadelphia corridor? They hit the end of the line, the end of Gaza, right up against the fence with Egypt. These are the electrical bungee kids, I call them, because they would take the remains of the electrical lines and they would bungee 20, 30 feet in the air. They have no fear because everything horrific had already happened to them. Some of them had been abducted and managed to escape. Many of them had been bombed multiple times and survived. So bungeeing 20, 30 feet in the air is nothing to them. It was just fun. Where are they? Where are they? Hundreds of them who would be in music videos. Where are they? We don't know. So make an effort to get out there, to rallies, to protests, to keep going. More and more films are appearing. If we can't, for example, have a film series here on the campus at the Wang Center, as we ought to, we will continue to have them, dispersed throughout the neighborhoods of Three Village and Port Jefferson. You can have one, you can host one in your house, right? Most people have these giant screens. You could do something. You just need a projector and a white wall. By the way, there are a lot of documentaries available. These are all free. A lot of things are now free. And Watermelon Pictures actually purchased a few things that they did not direct or produce, but they purchased them for free distribution, like Israelism. Which I saw. I thought that was a very soft film. I guess if you're a Zionist, that might have been a shocker, but to most of us, it was pretty soft. If that's the way it has to be, that's one. If there are people who are on the fence and you feel like, what on earth is going to push them off it, what's going to wake them up, maybe that's the film you could start with. Although No Other Land. Really anything just to open their eyes will probably work.
I have a few more words from Mahmoud, and he was saying that there needs to be post-war relief. Inshallah, it's post-war, but we should say post-genocide for people. Providing temporary homes needs to be done until reconstruction begins, and to urge institutions to adopt orphan children in Gaza, to take care of them, to provide them meals, to provide them clothing, to provide them shelter, to provide education, because many of these children have no family left.
Yeah.
And he said tell them we really love life and will always hold on to it. And we also consider death for the sake of the homeland a badge of honor. In short, if we live with dignity, and if we die free. And that was my brother Mahmoud Albaya. And I do have something from IHAB detailing the reception of the prisoners today in Khan Yunis, the Nasser hospital. There was a big gathering of people there to welcome the freed prisoners. He said the prisoners today had some signs of torture. They were depriving them of food, also from entering the bathroom. They beat them and told them that they had killed their sons, and they also came out of these prisons and concentration camps sick. But I won't hide it. Today was the first day joy entered our home in 2 years. He also said there's a need now that there are some more goods available in Gaza. There needs to be also a flow of cash so that people can actually buy the goods that are now available. Because no one has money. Everyone's money is wiped out. And there is more food available now, but no one can buy it.
Well, in the beginning, Western Union was still there until they literally ran out of cash. They couldn't keep up. I don't think Gazans should have to pay for anything ever
shouldn't.
Again.
There should be free aid.
They should not have to negotiate their way toward food to get out of this nightmare. The baby formula, the fortified milk, everything has to flow, which means the border has to open, which means we need a force there. Obviously Israel is not going to police themselves, but they will police you, and they will police the food. By the way, a lot of the food that's the settlers either destroy it or steal it, and that's the thing, right? With so many people are contributing and the trucks are full and they're ready to go, and they just take it for themselves. Whatever doesn't get in, often they either destroy it or take it for themselves. And they've done this for decades, and it doesn't matter whether it's an art supply or, a set of encyclopedias or baby formula. They steal what isn't theirs. And they steal. Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Just quickly, one thing about the orphans. When Mahmoud mentioned them, it doesn't mean that they want the orphans removed from Gaza. Not at all. The orphans of Palestine must remain in Palestine at all costs. But there are people trying to set up. There are just small, whatever they can to help the children, but they need a lot of assistance, right? For an individual who doesn't have money to feed his own family, and the parents are trying to do this with other children, basically set up an orphanage, that they need assistance. There are some orphanages, and actually one of them was, at the end of each of our programs we play the Voice Project, the Voice Quilt for Hassan. After Hassan was killed, his parents set up an orphanage. I'm not sure what's left of it. It was really beautiful. They did the best they could. It was so beautiful. And I pray, I have to check on it. I think it's still there. But, yes. Yeah. So the idea is to keep the kids there, where they are.
Yes, absolutely. There must be no mass removal, as was done with indigenous people here, to the schools where they were re-educated, brainwashed with Western culture.
Well, we're still missing, infants who were stolen by Israeli soldiers, taken into Israel. We don't know what they did with them. A lot of kids, mostly infants and toddlers, we just don't know.
Inshallah, we can find them and bring them back to their families or their relatives.
Absolutely.
I have one more message from Gaza. This is from Mohammed Bakr, who is actually, he's trying to start an initiative to offer students free educational programs. So they're looking for anyone with medical knowledge, psychiatric knowledge, just basic general skills that can be shared with students for free, for a pro bono, to provide them a way to learn without having to pay the expensive fees at the institutions. If they can't afford that, they can still at least continue learning in the fields that they were trying to study in. So this is his message to the world. A message from Gaza to the world. I am from Gaza, from a city where dust still hangs in the air and the sound of rubble still haunts its memory. They say the war is over, but we know that only the noise has ended. The pain still lives among us, in the streets, in our eyes, in the images we no longer dare to look at. We, the survivors of the storm, are trying to pick ourselves up from the rubble, trying to remember what life was like before it was erased. In Gaza, no one is the same again. Everything has changed. Homes, schools, faces, even our hearts. They no longer know the joy that we once knew. But despite all this, we still live. We live because we believe that no matter how long the darkness lasts, the sun will inevitably rise after it. We live because we know that no matter how silent the world is, there will come a day when it will hear the truth in our voice, not in the voice of those who speak for us. To everyone listening now, we are not numbers in the news, nor are we fleeting scenes on screens. We are human beings. We dreamed, we loved, sang, and laughed, and here we are trying to learn all over again how to start from scratch. From under the rubble we emerged carrying what remained of our souls, telling the world, we don't want pity, we want justice. We don't ask for charity, we ask for dignity. We just want to live in peace as every human being has the right to live. From Gaza, which still dreams despite the pain, I send you these words, to say that we are still here, and that there is still life within us. Muhammad, from the heart of Gaza.
Beautiful, Muhammad. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for being such a great person, for making these friendships, for reading their words on air for everyone. Because these are the voices of Gaza. We don't know why. Well, we know why. Western media just, it's like it can't handle itself. We wish they would just get out of the way and let people do what needs to be done. If they don't want to be journalists, this silly issue about, well, there are no foreign journalists in Gaza. Who the hell cares? The Gazans have been doing it for us. They've been doing everything. All you have to do is copy and paste, basically. What more does anyone want? No journalist could enter and do a better job than what the children have been doing.
You could even hire them and pay them for the work they're doing.
Well, some have, like Al Jazeera, but every single Al Jazeera journalist has been killed by Israel. Every single one. Tonight's guest, who's coming, he should call soon. Again, David Rovics is here from Portland. He will be performing nearby in Selden, October 26th, 6 p.m. at Shai and Kahwe in Selden.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, please come. And that's a fundraiser again for Gazan artists, for the Middle East Children's Alliance, and for the Gaza Sunbirds Paralympic team, who I can't say enough about because they're fabulous. David, he sings about social justice and equality. But recently his music's gathered strength in his latest collection of songs about Palestine and Gaza's Holocaust, and is understood by anyone paying attention. He's given multiple performances in the New York City, Connecticut area, and we are lucky and grateful that he just called in. Yeah, I think. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah. So we've got him with us tonight. Can we tap into?
Yeah, I'm gonna patch you into the board. Is that cool? Cool.
And maybe he can tell us a little bit. He, I think, has already given a performance, and he's in the Brooklyn area. He might be performing tonight or tomorrow, or maybe he's just given a performance. But I think there's another one coming up this weekend that he can tell us about. Hey, David.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yes, Amal?
Yeah. Hi.
Hey.
So great to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great to hear you.
Yeah, and thank you for calling in.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Have you?
Pleasure.
I was giving a little bit about your bio. Maybe you can tell everybody more about yourself, how you've became involved in the solidarity work, and I don't know if you've given a performance yet. I know you just got here to the East Coast not long ago.
Yeah, we did have shows in the Boston area and a show in Ithaca, New York so far. So the tour has begun, but lots more to come. And how I got involved with, gosh, it's always those questions are always the hardest. How did it all start? Kind of, it's easier to say how it is going now, I guess, than how it started.
Well, it's an open-ended question. I'll let you. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up around the New York area, and my father is Jewish, and half my family is of Jewish, lineage, and so I grew up with all sorts of ideas about what Israel was that all got shattered by the time I was 12 and started reading the newspapers, even as bad as the Western news was then and still is. I still could figure it out from reading the New York Times at the age of 12 that Israel had a lot of problems. It was at that time, I guess it was, occupying Lebanon, and all kinds of terrible stuff happening when I was reading the Times as a young person, and it just kind of expanded from there, I guess. With the Second Intifada, that was when it really all was very much on my radar. By the time I was already traveling and playing music for a living, and went by the time the Second Intifada started. So I was already kind of plugged into sort of anti-war movement kind of stuff. So it was inevitable that I got involved with Palestine Solidarity, looking back at it. But I guess I wrote a song in particular that really upset a lot of Israelis, and then the week after I heard from all these Israelis calling me a Nazi and stuff, I started hearing from Palestinians who were saying much nicer things, and so that was kind of when we started with the massacre at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in September 2000. Yeah.
Because, you were only 12, but that's one thing we keep saying.
I was 12 in the 80s.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I was 12. I'm 58 now, so in 2000, I was already. I was like, let's see, in 1979 was when I started reading the New York Times. So I was reading the Times and sort of paying attention to international events at the time when Israel invaded Lebanon and the Sabra and Shatila massacres happened. Like, I was a kid reading the New York Times about, so that was my kind of introduction as a sort of young, slightly less than young adult to Israel and their horrible.
And were you writing
atrocities.
music from the very beginning?
No, my parents are both classical musicians, so I was playing classical music as a kid, but I didn't start writing songs until I was a young adult. And, but I was exposed to music and to the idea of how you could communicate so effectively through music, how you could bring people to understand a situation or a story or a person or a time, and so well through songs, so much more effectively than most other means of communication. I discovered that very young, which is something that people know all over the world from a very early age because it's part of every society. But, for me, it was, I guess, like that too. But I was lucky enough to be exposed to a lot more music than a lot of people are in this country anyway.
Well, we're lucky you were.
Yes.
Yeah. Is do you the first piece that you wrote that you were talking about? Do you remember the lyrics to it? I don't know
Yeah.
when you wrote it, but
yeah, I wrote it in September 2000, and it's called "Children of Jerusalem," and that's the first thing I ever wrote about the Palestinian struggle, and that's what got me. I had a tour of Israel that was planned to be happening actually for November 2000. That was sort of Israeli, Jewish Israeli folk clubs, and I had 10 gigs lined up, and then 9 of them got canceled, with the organizers all calling me a Nazi. And one of them, though, actually, interestingly, did not get canceled, and the guy said he also thought what was happening was horrible, and he was a psychiatrist who actually went to Gaza regularly and worked with Palestinian children. He was a veteran of the 67 and 73 wars, who had become a opponent of Israeli policies after that. But that was the one of 10 gigs that didn't cancel me after I wrote that song.
And how did the audience receive you?
Well, I didn't do the tour, because they canceled 9 out of the 10 gigs, so that tour didn't happen. But okay. I did do a tour of Israel a year earlier, though. That was the one tour I ever did of Jewish Israeli folk clubs, and in 1999, and it was a very, very strange and disturbing experience, which obviously would not be surprising to anybody that knows that Israel was an apartheid and is an apartheid state. But it wasn't the first place I was wanting to tour in necessarily, but I had gotten this invitation from a Jewish Israeli woman who heard me play in New York and said, and she heard me play anti-war songs against the bombing of Iraq, and so she wanted to organize a tour of Israel. And I thought, well, what the heck, if that's, see what this place is like. Never been there, and I just, I found it to be the most overtly racist society I had ever been to, and I'm from a pretty racist society, so it was, I've traveled all over this country, and I've been to other settler colonial states like, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, but this was really, Israel is really even more extreme. It felt like being in Mississippi in 1950 or something, something like that. It was just the hostility towards Palestinians and towards all Arabs that was just right there in the open everywhere I went. As soon as I did any songs about opposing U.S. foreign policy, if it had to do with anywhere in the Arab world, like Iraq, then people were, it was like the first time I did a song for an audience. It was like the 7th encore or something, and I did a song and nobody clapped. They loved what I was doing as long as it was about the United States or about ancient history or about the Vietnam War even, or the Civil Rights Movement. But as soon as it was about Arabs, it was a completely different experience. So it was quite an experience touring Israel that time.
Did you feel like you broke through with a single, did you make any connections with anyone in the audience?
Like, other than with, no, I didn't succeed in bringing people over, And I think it would have. I mean, what I eventually, I'm somewhat ashamed to admit this, but what I did after the first few gigs was I just stopped singing songs about the Middle East. I just on the rest of that Israel tour, I just did songs about other things, about injustice in the United States, about class and race and gender in the U.S. and about U.S. foreign policy in other countries. Because as long as I was singing about the resistance to the war in Vietnam, people were fine with that for some reason. Somehow that's a totally different thing in their minds. Other wars, if it's you talk about that, you can talk about I like to try to really reach and communicate with my audiences, whoever they may be, and really reach them on a level that they can relate to me, and where I don't alienate them. But Israel, playing for Israeli audiences was one of the few experiences I've had where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to adapt my set and my approach, so that, because usually with other audiences, you can still do the same songs, but you introduce them differently depending on the audience. You communicate differently depending on who you're talking to, but basically you don't have to vary the material that much. They'll be able to relate to the songs, because I like to think I write songs that to be generally accessible to a lot of different people, but how you introduce them varies. But with the Israelis, it didn't matter how I introduced it. It just didn't matter.
Well, we played earlier, at the beginning of the program, we played your song, Mahmoud Khalil.
Great.
Yeah, which, you did a wonderful job. I mean, you are a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
So you told as much of the story as you could within, a few minutes of song, and it's very clear from beginning to end. Have you been able to perform that song for anyone since you started this tour on the East Coast?
Yeah, I mean, we've just had a couple small audiences and, at these gigs so far. But the song has been, mostly I've played it at other shows in other places since I wrote it some months ago. And it's been online, and, people can, have been hearing it on Spotify and such. So I never know what kind of impact a song might have, if any. I just write it and try to put it out there in a good, well-recorded form, and hope that it might have some kind of make some kind of a wave somewhere, be useful for someone. And of course, I hear from people who say, things like that tell me about how songs had a good role in their life, or had helped convince them of something, or somebody else, or kept them going in various ways. And it's wonderful to get those messages, because I never know what's going to happen when I put a song out there, if it's going to have any impact. I would love to imagine that somebody in the justice system heard the song and thought, "Oh, we really better let the guy out now." There's a song, but it probably didn't happen.
You know what? You say that, but that's too much pressure on yourself. It's like asking the individual artist or any individual to do everything. And again, it's all of us coming together, doing whatever we do. From multiple angles, that's getting people out. When I say getting people out, I mean which is going to put an end to the genocide, which is going to put an end to Zionism, which is going to put an end to occupation and apartheid, and release every single prisoner, post-mortem or not. So, yeah, your song did have impact.
I hope so.
Absolutely.
I think any kind of movement needs music anyway, that's for sure. Any kind of movement that is going to be the kind of movement that might actually make a difference needs to be not only, well organized and have a vision for what it's trying to accomplish, but it needs to be optimistic. And in order to be optimistic, it needs to have lots of music in the culture. There needs to be food and music and celebration of life within the movement. Otherwise, movements fizzle out and die, and you see this all over the world with movements that are constantly involved with all sorts of resistance, but at the same time they're celebrating their own cultures and their own existence and their own resistance and their own music and food and art and puppetry and poetry, and that is just, I think, really important for the sustenance, sustaining and maintaining any kind of a movement. People get so discouraged, and for very good reasons. And if we're not singing together, then it's just all too much. Really, no matter how dedicated people are, people need to support each other, and they need to sing together. It's crucial.
I'm glad you brought that point up. I think in this movement, that's what people understand. Yeah, the importance of sharing the culture, and music has been. It's been a bit weird throughout the genocide, but it's been a huge part of it. And I think, the Gazans actually use music to show us what they're showing us. But it does exactly what you just said, which is it keeps us going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true, and it's so clearly true in Gaza, and it's so clearly true with all history of the Palestinian resistance, how central art and music has been. And then you can see this in so many other movements throughout history, and it's the Palestinian movement doesn't have a problem with this at all, but Palestinian solidarity movements in the English-speaking world often do have a problem with that. I mean, we just in the United States and the United Kingdom, Canada and Australia, some kind of reasoning that has been sort of part of the sort of left milieu for a long time now has been out there sort of convincing people that there's something frivolous about art and culture and music. And if you want to be a real committed activist, you have to just focus and don't get yourself distracted with, silly, frivolous things like music. And it's such a dangerous orientation. If it wasn't something that the FBI came up with in order to disrupt the left, then it was a brilliant move. Whoever came up with it, because it's been just the perfect ploy to disrupt the left. It's like a good anthropologist analyzing a society. Looks at what's the weak point. Well, they really need music. It's music that holds them together. Without music, they're all arguing with each other, and they're shouting at each other, and they fall apart. So we figured out music is the key, and so they targeted that. Make sure that they at every turn make sure they discount the importance of music, and make sure they talk about how frivolous it is, and how you must be very middle class and very white if you're even thinking about the importance of music. There must be something defective about you. It's just very, very flawed reasoning that has become very, very much internalized in the English-speaking world.
Thank you for bringing that up and putting it that way. I think it's probably something some of us see or feel on a subconscious level, but never really analyzed. Because for a lot of us, music is part and parcel of life. All of the arts are. It would be weird. Also, some of, I think, what we do, crafts or traditional arts in many indigenous cultures, not just Palestine, but it's just what you learn from day one. It's just natural. So people don't necessarily categorize it as an art. It's just something you do. My mother sings. We never said she was a singer. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that saying. I don't know from what part of Africa it comes, but if you can walk, you can sing. If you can, if you can talk, you can sing. If you can walk, you can dance. It's just it's in our. As soon as our hearts start beating, it's rhythm, and it's melody and rhythm right there.
It's also part of the reason why they attack the artists.
Yeah.
Because the artists help keep the movement going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so true. And if people have any doubt about that, just look at the number of authors and poets and musicians and playwrights and directors and all these others that Israel has methodically targeted over the past 60 years or more. How many? Gosh, really. They know how important art and music is.
Yeah, but what they don't know is that we don't lose any. When we lose the person, we don't lose their work. We amplify it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
You
amplify it. So
create a
every
martyr
time they
that way.
kill someone, it's almost like they've rebirthed 100 of that same person.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that they will never understand this. They will never understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that makes me wonder, next time I go to the UK, am I going to get arrested for wearing a T-shirt that says I support Palestine Action? And I'm just wondering because, like, are they going to be dumb enough to actually start arresting musicians? Because as soon as they start making trouble for musicians, they get like 10 times as popular on Spotify. Like what they've done with the band Kneecap. I mean, Kneecap was popular before, but they're like so much more popular now that they've been targeted. I didn't even know who they were.
Yeah.
Right? That's how most people find out who they are.
Yeah.
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 I hope they arrest me, but I'm wondering if they're really going to be that dumb. Because so far, I don't think they've arrested any musicians in the UK or artists, for holding those signs. But they're arresting anybody who's holding the sign, so who knows? But I have a song that says in the song.
They went after the elderly, mostly elderly, retired people weeks ago.
Lots of octogenarians, yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot. And I should have asked first, were you able to play a piece for us from wherever you are?
Oh, I can't live because I've only got these earbuds.
It's okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
No,
I think we
talked
about
it
briefly.
wouldn't work, unfortunately. Yeah, if I were home, then I could. Because at home I have
more of
my
your music
recording
here.
set up. Mm-hmm.
We can play, but maybe you'd like to tell people about some of the pieces that you've been performing.
Yeah, well, since I guess since October 2023, I've been fairly obsessively writing songs to try to do all the sort of documenting of the various ways that Israel is trying to kill everybody. And so that's I guess I've written 65 songs since October 23 about the genocide. And so that's been my main obsession as far as topics of writing goes for the past couple of years. I could talk about any of the songs, but it's kind of like I'm really just trying to come at it from a different angle every time, in the hopes of like reaching people who might be reached by some different way of looking at what's happening. And then other times I'm just trying to write a song about the most recent atrocity, just to have amplify in whatever way I can, so people might understand what's going on there.
Yeah, but David, it's also about preservation. When you write down these stories, it's about preserving the history, and your music will be included always as part of the history.
Yeah, and that is that thought gives me so much solace to know that, probably at some point in the future, people might be looking at what happened and they'll be looking for ways to digest what happened and put it in short form that explains something, and, they'll find songs, and that'll be... The songs do, actually, even songs that don't get really famous, they still serve a placeholder effect. They can really, if somebody's written and recorded a song about a historical event, it's, I think, a lot less likely to be just completely written out of history and forgotten. There's at least that, and then that's kind of a placeholder for people to look into it more. But like one example, like one of the most prominent historians to live in this country in my lifetime, Howard Zinn, he wrote in the introduction to his seminal work, People's History of the United States, he wrote that he first heard about the Ludlow Massacre in Colorado, which was an incident where dozens of women, children, and men were killed by the Colorado National Guard in the course of a strike at a copper mine. And he first heard about it from a song by Woody Guthrie. And like, what if that song hadn't been written? Like, would that even have been part of his history book? I mean, how many more people would have forgotten about the battles at the copper mines in Colorado in the 1920s that the miners lost? And there's so much history that is just well, there's so many great stories to write songs about, first of all, but then there's so much history that's just lost or at risk of being completely lost.
Yeah, and you're so appreciated. What you're doing is so appreciated by everyone, not just Palestinians, everyone, because this is a whole process of erasure, and Israel's going bonkers that people like you refuse to let stories be erased.
Yeah, that's it. That's certainly what I'm trying to do. And there's so many more stories that will never be told. Yeah, but we can at least tell some of them.
Oh, we can tell some. We can tell as many. I mean, we have lists and lists, and between you and Sam and everyone out there, trying to not just amplify stories but preserve them. Because you become the voice of the voiceless.
Yeah. That's an important thing to try to do for all of us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I still find it strange that we've got any entity deciding who gets to keep their civilization and live and who doesn't.
It's just so beyond the ability of anybody within kind of a remotely functioning moral compass to understand how any army could be doing what they've been doing. I mean, it's one thing that gives you some hope, though, when you ask yourself questions like, how could anybody do this kind of thing that they're doing? How could they just be, indiscriminately slaughtering everybody in the region to supposedly go after one group, with reasoning that's obviously, plainly, completely, lying. But then you look at the statistic recently reported in the Israeli press that 40% of reservists in the Israeli military are currently refusing to report to duty and risking imprisonment. 40%.
And so that doubled in a very short period of time.
I mean, that's a lot of people, even if it doesn't double, and I hope it does. And of course, now with the so-called ceasefire, who knows what's going to happen with the big call-up of reservists and all the stuff they were planning to do, with the full-on, ground invasion that they never actually did because they're still terrified of actual conflict with Hamas. All they want to do is, send in, aerial bombardment. It's the whole name of the game for Israel.
Well,
and drones
they use a lot of robots. Because they don't, I don't know, do you call them soldiers? We call them cowards because they have no fighting skills. They're not going to fight a battle with anyone unless they're completely backed by 2 nuclear powers and every arsenal known to mankind. So what they sent in last minute before the ceasefire were a lot of robots to destroy what was left of Jabalia. And the entire historic area of it's the Zaytun neighborhood. This is where the Greek Orthodox Church was. I don't know what's left of it, and a lot of cultural centers, and it's all gone. The entire neighborhood was blasted to kingdom come in a few days, and that wasn't supposed to happen. None of this should have happened, but that was during the ceasefire. Just beforehand, while they were talking about it or working out this ridiculous plan.
It's just, I mean, on Al Jazeera, like, since the ceasefire, it seems like they're getting more access to Gaza from the sky. I don't know if that's true, or they're just showing a lot more aerial footage for whatever reason. And it is just, the whole of Gaza pretty much looks like Jabalia. It is just, one gray pile of rubble. unimaginable how anything goes forward from here, and it's very clear that the whole plan was to destroy the whole place. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with the ceasefire. I think, obviously Trump has different interests that he's maybe trying to weigh against each other, and decided that all the Gulf states with all their money maybe matter too. And I don't know if what's happening now is just a temporary lull in the genocide, basically a farcical piece in order to get the hostages out, and then Israel's going to continue bombing, which is what so many Smotrich and Ben Gvir are openly saying, that this is just temporary first phase, and that they have not agreed to the other phases, and they're not going to agree to the other phases. So, I mean, presumably the plan is still to kill everybody in Gaza or drive them out of Gaza. But if the point was to wreak the kind of revenge that Nazis are known for wreaking, which is where you kill 100 of your opponent for every one of your people that gets killed, then they've now accomplished that. They've killed, I think, at least 100 Palestinians in Gaza for every Israeli that was killed on October 7th. And I think that was part of the point. And I think it's much more than that. But the numbers that they've got from the health ministry are much, much lower than the actual number. But if the actual number is twice what they're saying in the health ministry, then they've killed more than, that. Yeah. I mean,
I don't like reducing this to numbers. One person was too many.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. But the Nazis in Germany, the actual German Nazis, had a policy of any time like a Nazi soldier was killed in an occupied city, in an occupied town in the Czech Republic or in Hungary or wherever it was that the Nazis were occupying, if a Nazi soldier got killed in a local village, then the local Nazis would round up 100 people and kill them all, in retribution for that one Nazi. If 2 Nazis got killed, they'd round up 200 local people and kill them all. That was policy, and the Israelis are Nazis, and they're following exactly the Nazi playbook, one after another. And I wrote a song about it too, just like the Nazis did. Every verse in Just Like the Nazis Did is about things that Israelis are doing right now, which is just mimicking policies from the Nazis, who is the regime from whom they're getting their whole...
the West Bank, it's called the price tag.
Price tag, the fascists, the Jewish fascists in the West Bank.
And then they destroy the entire village. I mean, that's their excuse for destroying an entire village. All of Masafa, 19 hamlets in Masafa Riata, they're pretty much all ethnically cleansed. I don't like the word cleansed either. They've been, many were exterminated.
Exterminated or driven out. Yeah, there's so many of these words that even if they're supposed to be powerfully negative, they still are euphemisms. And using terms like cleansed, nothing like this. It doesn't capture the horror.
No, but just leading us a little bit back to the music. What was the title of the piece that you just mentioned?
Oh, Just Like the Nazis Did.
That is the title?
Yeah, it's from my album Notes from a Holocaust, which is the first of the albums I put out about the genocide.
You mentioned, Sam's looking it up now, we're going to try and play it on air. You mentioned, Spotify. A lot of musicians, we've kind of boycotted Spotify for multiple reasons, but our recent guest, we had Ahmed Aid, he actually just did several posts that I think Spotify doesn't pay you much. It's not so good for you guys in general.
No.
But do you have anything on Bandcamp?
Yes, I have. I put up all my albums on Bandcamp.
Oh yeah. Okay, great.
And then I also put them up on all the streaming platforms. And I agree with all the criticisms of Spotify, and I've actually written 2 songs specifically about how much Spotify sucks. And one is called A Penny a Play, and one is called Somewhere on Spotify. But even though Spotify sucks from the perspective of artists, and even though they have totally undermined my career and the career of millions of other artists financially, especially when they started their free tier in 2013, it's really been a disaster for so many people. But at the same time, like 70%, something like 70% of streaming that in the world is Spotify. So like any young person in the world outside of China who is listening to music is quite likely listening to it on Spotify.
Well, let's see what we can do about shifting that.
Well, it'd be great to shift it, but in the meantime, I want to reach the people. And, my main purpose with putting out music is to communicate to society. And so I would not take my stuff off of Spotify, because that's like disappearing myself. That's like losing a huge audience and they're not going to migrate to some other platform. They're just going to assume I'm gone. That's just how people are.
That's an
They follow the path of least resistance. They just figure you're gone. That's why it was so dangerous that these platforms have the ability to just disappear you if they want to. Spotify could, at a whim, just tell me I don't belong on the platform anymore, and there's pretty much nothing I can do. But I'm not gonna do that, myself. But I'm on the side with all the people who are doing it. I just.
This is much like Instagram disappearing an entire account.
Exactly.
Which, in the case of a journalist, is an entire library.
And
library
also
of the
probably
genocide.
how they get half their gigs. It's a serious, like, people look on Instagram, they see photos of a journalist, and that's how they find out about this person, and that's how they might get hired. People don't think of the professional aspect of it, but because most people aren't like professional photographers or musicians. But if you are, these platforms are, unfortunately, you're really essential. Even though they're sabotaging your career, whatever good they're doing is what you've got going on. 1/3 of my new audience is probably coming from Spotify.
Well, we are going to
even
keep
though they
pushing your
sabotage my
work
career.
on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp is much better as far as the payout goes.
Well, I started
Although
using it.
On Bandcamp, you can stream everything for free too. It's just that you can also pay to buy albums. But on Spotify, you can make donations. But nobody does it. But you can click a button and make a donation. But people tend to assume that these platforms are actually paying the artists like the way they should be. Life is better. In people's imaginations, life is often much better. Everything is much more fair and equitable and structured than the actual reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I do like, we mentioned this before, the Bandcamp works a little bit like old albums, where, you can tell us more about yourself with, both images and story. And
I like that too.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's so frustrating about platforms like Spotify is there's nowhere to communicate at all with people. There's nowhere for them to read a bio. There's nowhere for them to find out who took the photo that's on the cover, like credits. There's nowhere to share the credits. Nothing. That's all they get. So then it just seems unfair to, like, people like the photographer, for example, who might have taken the picture for the cover, like, even though they're working for free, they're not going to get it. They never expected to get anything out of doing this, but at least, they used to get a credit. Mm-hmm. Now they can't even get a credit. And you can't, it's just, they make it difficult that way to, so that they can control the communication rather than. The internet was much better before 2006. I hate to be one of those people, saying back in the good old days, but it was really much better before social media took it over. There was a lot of actual organizing going on independent free websites. And it was much more chaotic and didn't look as nice, but it sure worked better for organizing. But Facebook just killed that.
I think it felt like we were just comparing to Spotify, less cold. You mentioned the credits not being there. You don't know who's done what. You don't, and if they don't get paid, at the very least, they receive credit. But that's I mean, I think this is beginning to change, and I hope Bandcamp or something similar, just keeps taking over, from social media, from music, however, throughout the arts in particular. And we don't have to go back to, things can still be organized. However, it feels more personable when you get to read the story and see names and learn about people.
Yeah, I think so. But I guess Spotify, or they must have realized that very few people are actually reading these liner notes, and so I mean that's the kind of logic that goes into the streamlining usually, right? But it's probably true. Very few people were reading them, but
I'm not going to stop banging away against Spotify.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
they deserve it.
And then their CEO giving an obscene amount of money to fund genocide.
Joe Rogan and the genocide and something. There's some, I can't remember, something I was reading recently that had, something terrible. Yeah, but I guess it's pretty much the case with all those big tech platforms, right? I mean, it's good to target one and pick one and single them out, and hopefully it can have an impact. I mean, like what happened recently with Microsoft, I guess they pulled out of hosting the IDF's cloud server or whatever it was, right?
Finally, yeah.
Yeah, finally, yeah. But I guess they were getting a lot of pressure from a lot of their own staff quitting.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that, again, people pressure power, from inside, from outside. It's this ultimately is going to need a political solution. However, unless we push them into it, it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the world is so
we
awake.
Need a mass movement.
I feel like the world is so awake.
A lot of people are. I mean, certainly, like, I think that, when I look at TikTok and Instagram and I see, massive marches in London and Berlin, and, I think that's real, and that's really important for people to know about. And I hope that there's more people, on those platforms that are seeing the same stuff I'm seeing. But I can tell you, living in Portland, Oregon, one of the most supposedly progressive cities in the country, you walk around the streets throughout the city on the average day. I'm the only one with a Palestine flag on my T-shirt. Nobody's saying anything about it, and nobody else is. Nobody's got anything in their yards or on their bodies, or in there's no vigils happening. I mean, on a typical day, you're walking around Portland, and I walk a lot. I like walking. You won't see any evidence that there's a genocide going on, supported by our tax dollars with our missiles. That's just. And then and I wrote an essay about this recently. But like you go to just big cultural events, like the big, it's not, Portland and Oregon is known for have the music scene, and you go to a big popular festival like Pickathon with all these great bluegrass and other musicians all over the place, and you'll see no evidence whatsoever anywhere at the festival, certainly not on the stage, that there's a genocide happening. You don't see any Palestine flags or anything at Pickathon. You go to other cultural events in Portland, festivals going on the waterfront, nothing.
Well, why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of things. For some people, they're outraged, but they just don't feel like it's going to make any difference for them to do anything, like go to a demo or wear a T-shirt or put something in their lawns or any signifying or whatever else they might do that would make it visible to people walking around that this is happening. I think there's that element of people that are just discouraged and feel like there's no point. But then there's an awful lot of people, like lots of my extended family members, who watch MSNBC and listen to NPR, and they are getting very, very little information about the genocide, and they're getting a lot of information about the hostages and a lot of information about all kinds of stories about, the hardships for Israelis living on kibbutzes in the southern part of Israel and whatever. They're just getting a totally warped reality. And, you look at the polls, some of the polls recently in the United States, and 50% of Americans don't know whether it's more Palestinians or more Israelis being killed in this conflict. And I agree with you that it's not about the numbers, but it is a very, very, disproportionate, unbalanced conflict, with one side having all the tanks and planes and drones and the other side having, small arms, if any. And this is the people just start. There's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of media narrative. There's a lot of information getting suppressed in social media through algorithms. I think it's one of the reasons they don't like TikTok. Because so many of the things that are happening seem to not show up in a lot of platforms as much as they do in TikTok, and they don't like that. Whatever algorithm is allowing people to see that there's a genocide going on, they don't like that. I think what's going to happen with Larry Ellison taking over TikTok is going to be a complete disaster, because, all these corporate tech platforms are absolutely horrible, but with whatever differences there are now, they're going to be gone soon, because if Larry Ellison is going to be taking over TikTok, that's the CIA running TikTok right there. Forget about any differences between that platform and any of the others.
You know what might happen? This is my hope, is that as people are forced to turn away from some of the things they're accustomed to using, this is happening already, that more and more just are on the street. Sometimes we explain to Gaza why we're not always on Instagram, or why we're not why we're not there as much as we used to be, and it's simply because we're out there. We're still working for them. We're just doing it differently. On the other hand, we don't want to lose that connection.
Yeah, no, but it's so much better to be on the street than scrolling anywhere, and more people are realizing that. I think just whatever you're doing on social media isn't really actually changing anything, and you need to get out there and stop arguing with bots. So increasingly, that's literally what people are doing, and I think I increasingly see that more and more people realize there's absolutely no point to arguing with these people. They're not even people. I was targeted by this troll bot farm that was probably hired by the group UK Lawyers for Israel a little over a year ago, and I got 27,000 comments on my Facebook page in the month of April alone, just in 1 month, and it was like 99% of it was like, Israeli bots, saying all kinds of horrible stuff about me being anti-Semite and baby killer and whatever, all the usual stuff. But these are not actually people writing this stuff so much of the time now. It's well known now that Israel is massively into the whole bot farm thing, try to push the Israeli narrative on all the social media platforms.
Well, they've been trying.
They have tried. And
well, they were infuriated in the beginning that they really lost the social media war almost overnight.
Did, right?
Because
so they got the bots involved.
They got the bots involved because when people are involved, like we're all there for free.
Yeah.
For the Zionists to be there as a person, they have to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just not enough of ardent Zionists out there, right? So they need to have lots of ardent bots. I don't know. There's a lot of Christian evangelical Israel supporters. So even if there's not enough Jewish Zionists out there in the world to argue with all the Palestinian supporters of Palestine, there is quite a lot of brainwashed evangelical Christians in this country. They could do a lot of. I don't know how many of them are involved with arguing with people on Facebook and threads, but I don't know. It's
they're running the country.
They are. They're busy running. They're running the country, and they're spending a lot of time on social media. My goodness, very impressive.
And they're being run.
These people can tweet. Yeah, they're being run. by the highest bidder, I suspect.
Well, David, we're going to play. We've got 10 minutes left, and we're going to play a couple of your pieces. I think Sam's got. Which one do you have queued up?
I have Just Like the Nazis Did queued up here.
Great.
And
it's so wonderful talking with you guys.
Is there another one that you'd like played as well?
Oh, I think if we're going to stick with really heavy stuff, then play that From Auschwitz to Gaza. That's the title track of the CD before, or the album before the new one, second to last. Yeah.
And just a reminder, we are really lucky that David Rovics is with us as guest tonight, and that he's coming out in our direction on the island. He'll be in Selden October 26th for a fundraiser for Gaza, and that will start at 6 p.m. at the cafe called Shai and Kahwe. Again, you can find tickets. It's by donation, and that is listenupgaza.betterworld.org. The full title is Listen Up for Gaza, but automatically the website dropped the 4. So listenupgaza.betterworld.org. And David, thank you. Thank you for coming out here. Thank you for being with us tonight. And you can, I don't know, Sam, can he hear? If
you stay on the line, you can hear it come through, or you can tune in with whatever method works best for you on the website. If you hang on the line, you should be able to hear the song come through. And thank you so much for joining us.
Hope to see folks in Long Island. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Amal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
After so many decades of patronage, the world's greatest empire, after so many potential agreements were rejected by opening fire, after crushing so many uprisings, now they're making their ultimate bid, pursuing their final solution, just like the Nazis did. They forced refugees into ghettos, then set the ghettos aflame, murdering writers and poets, and so no one remembers their names, killing their entire families, the grandparents, women and kids, the uncles and cousins and babies, just like the Nazis did. They're bombing all means of sustaining human life at all. See the few shelters remaining, watch as the tower blocks fall. They're bombing museums and libraries in order to get rid of any memory of the people who lived here, just like the Nazis did. They're saying these people are animals, and they should all end up dead. They're sending soldiers into schools and shooting children in the head. The rhetoric is identical, and with Gaza off the grid, they've already said what happens next, just like the Nazis did. Words of war for domestic consumption and lies for all the rest, to try to distract our attention among their enablers in the West. Because Israel needs their imports to keep those pallets on the skids. They need fuel, they need missiles, just like the Nazis did. They're using food as a weapon, they're using water that way too. They're trying to kill everyone or make them flee, it's true. As the pundits talk of after the war, like with the fall of Madrid, the victors are preparing for more, just like the Nazis did. But it's after the conquest's complete, if history is any guide, when the occupying army is positioned to decide, when disease and famine kills whoever may have hid behind the ghetto walls, just like the Nazis did. All around the world, people are trying to tell. There's a genocide unfolding, ringing alarm bells. But with such a powerful axis and so many lucrative bids, they know who wants their money, just like the Nazis did. There's so many decades of patronage by the world's greatest empire. There's so many potential agreements were rejected by opening fire. After crushing so many uprisings, now they're making their ultimate bid, pursuing their final solution, just like the Nazis did. Just like the Nazis did. Just like the Nazis did. Camp's open air, that's the one thing that distinguishes what is happening in Gaza right now compared to the time of the Third Reich and its crimes against any decency, against any sanity, against all the children, against all humanity. Auschwitz to Gaza, there's no difference between babies and fighters on that side of the fence, the side where they starve because the food is kept out by the occupation, and no others, no doubt, where people are dropping dead on their feet while searching for crumbs of food on the street. From Auschwitz to Gaza, all night and all day, all the people inside just wasting away, everyone waiting for death to arrive, shot or starved or burned alive, where each passing moment is punctured by groans of 1 million children as thin as their bones. To Gaza, the outside world knew, and many lamented about what they might do, while their leaders looked for money to be made in the arms trade. Once again, just like this, profiting from the apocalypse. From Auschwitz to Gaza, the stages of starvation are exactly the same under occupation. First the fat goes, then all the rest, the muscle, the marrow, the milk in the breasts of all nursing mothers, as in front of their eyes their babies cry their last little cries. From Auschwitz to Gaza, under either command, all of the killing is entirely planned. Whether they call it a camp or a zone, it's all the same skin and bone. Whether they say work makes you free or humanitarian city. From Auschwitz to Gaza, the political line, from occupied Poland to Palestine, leaders outside will say we weren't aware of the extent of the horrors happening there. They'll shed a few tears